Hi, everyone. Welcome to our rewatch of the Evangelion movies, leading up to the final movie. With me, as always, is Celia Rose and Chad. Hey, everybody. So, we're here. We're going to talk about Evangelion.
Woohoo!
We never finished our, what do you call it, our series rewatch.
I know.
we went up to, I think, like, was it like,
We got
how many
far.
episodes are there for the series?
There's 26 for the TV show. I
26.
think I want to
we
say
went
we've
to
made
18
it.
or something.
We made it at least to the mid-season, like the mid-series recap.
Oh, we did.
We
We
made
went
it pretty
past
far.
that. Yeah, we made it past that. We made it to like I think episode 17 or something like that, and then that was it.
I
16,
finished
17.
it. I gave up on you guys.
I was about to say, I admit
kept
that I
going.
watched it without you guys.
Chad.
I
Just
waited.
kept on going.
I waited for both of you, and you both let me down. You terrible people. Hate you.
That's what you have for having faith in this.
And other human beings. I've learned my lesson.
Horrible.
Oh
But-
man.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the first movie. It's Evangelion 1, You Are Not Alone. Celia, why don't you start us off? Let's talk about the first movie.
Cool. All right. So this first movie came out in Japan in 2007. It's been a really long time since this movie came out. Like saying the year out loud just made me realize how long it's been.
How long it's been. Yeah.
The first movie was billed as a retelling of events from the TV series. That was kind of the point of the rebuilds, was to start fresh and make the story more accessible for newer viewers and people who hadn't had any experience with Evangelion before. And when you watch Rebuild 1.0, there are a lot of things that are similar to the TV series, but some events have been tweaked a little bit, so there are some minor differences, or they've been truncated so they don't take nearly as much time. So in the first Rebuild movie is when Shinji arrives at Nerve. Hang on. All right. So Shinji is summoned to Nerve because they need a pilot for Eva Unit 1. Kind of the same start to the TV series. Rei is injured. Unit 0 is inoperable because the pilot can't do anything. But Gendo is going out on a limb and trying to reach out to his son, who he hasn't spoken to in years. Misato fetches him as usual. Sachiel is the first angel that you see and that they fight in Rebuild. Kind of pretty much the same story beats as the first 3 episodes. Shinji refuses to get in the robot because he realizes his dad just wanted something from him and didn't actually want to reconnect with him. But realizing that Rei was going to have to go in his place, he decides to go into Unit 1, defeats Sachiel after Unit 1 goes berserk. And by then he starts his training. He lives with Misato, and the story goes from there. You actually don't get to meet very many characters from the TV series at this point. I think the newest ones that you get Rei, Toji, and Kensuke. Asuka doesn't even make an appearance in this movie. She doesn't show up until much later.
Kaoru made a small appearance at the end.
Yes. That is one of the differences, is that this time Kaworu shows up. He shows up on the moon, and he kind of wakens from this weird coffin, and there's a whole row of them on the moon.
A whole bunch of them, yeah.
Some which have been opened, some which have not. He looks out upon the earth, and he says, I can't remember the full line of dialogue, but there's one line that always sticks out, is where he says that this time, Shinji, I will make you happy. Like, he is so focused on Shinji's happiness coming true that it's something that they make a point to say towards the end of the movie. So that is one of the biggest differences, is Kaworu shows up much earlier. And in this case, he is technically the first angel instead of being, I think he was number 15 in the TV series. Like, he was way later.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know the answer to that one. When he says that line, is that in reference to, I don't remember. Like, they have never met, right, in this lifetime?
Not in Rebuilds.
So
They haven't
is
met
it
yet.
like a reincarnation thing, or is it like a repeat of the same?
I actually always thought, well, I didn't always thought, but I more thinking about it more, I thought that maybe it was like a wink,
At
like a meta reference. Like he's making a reference to an event in the television
to
series,
yeah,
even
the
though
different
we
version.
we as the audience are supposed to be treating the rebuild films as if the TV series hasn't happened.
Mhm,
But you know, Anno knows that,
mhm.
right? So I always thought that that was a little bit of a wink.
It's possible
So
outside of the storyline, but
yeah,
like inside of the storyline,
a
there,
little bit of continuity humor,
yeah.
or
You
something
think
to be
that's all it was
canned.
though? There has to be some sort of meaning within the story itself. So
I
yeah,
feel
it made
like
me question.
I think that it. I think it is that like it's a nod to the fact that the movies are assuming you've seen at least the TV series
Hmm.
before meeting Kaworu, which is kind of like why it's a surprise that he's there in the first place. Because if you've seen the TV show, you're not expecting him to show up until much later. So
Yeah,
having him show up right at the beginning is
yeah.
already
I
saying
forgot.
this is going to be completely different than what the
Hmm.
TV series was.
Yeah,
Um,
they're gonna mess with it a little bit, yeah. Which
right?
makes sense too, because like the events in the first film are actually like they follow the events of the television series like pretty closely, I thought,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering correctly. And I was just like thinking that yeah, that was a good like zinger at the end to like sort of like throw you off and say, we're not just going to do like a complete like sequential retelling of everything. We're going to mess with stuff. And I
Right?
think that might have been one of the reasons for the wink as well. Maybe, just saying it out loud just now. That maybe that was one of the reasons for the wink as well, was to like sort of like nudge the audience and say, you thought this was gonna, just be smooth sailing, but no, we're throwing this at you, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. The Angels also get a significant visual upgrade in the Rebuild movies. So, like, we see Sachiel and Ramiel in Rebuild 1.0. Ramiel looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like the 3D CG is a little rough because obviously this was made in 2007. Like 3D CG integration hadn't been totally refined yet, but it still looks amazing. Like
Hmm.
It
the way
looks
that they
way
utilize
better.
all the
Yeah.
reflections and were able to like do the rapid shape
Yeah, the
shifting and
reaction.
stuff.
Yeah, so
Like
awesome.
Ramiel looked great in the TV series. I really love the animation in the TV series, but using 3D CG for that angel in particular
Just
was able to create this unique charisma for this monster that they couldn't have accomplished drawing it by hand.
I
Hmm.
couldn't agree more. And we hear both on Macross Fan Central Pop to Culture, and we've heard it on multiple fan communities like for the last 10 to 15 years that we've been active online. We have heard so many times about from so many fans who say, "Oh, I hate CG. It's never as good as like hand drawn. I wish they would just do more hand drawn stuff. That's my favorite, blah blah fucking blah." And this is like a perfect poster child for the way CG can be used to not only improve but far surpass the original 2D hand drawn animation for a particular creature, because the 3D element to this, like Celia said, it's so great. It's such a much more in-depth realization. Not only that, the CG gives Ramiel a weight and a dimension, a thickness, a realness that the creature just didn't feel like it had in the
Mm-hmm.
in the original animated series, because there was only so much that they could do with it. In here, they show the creature, like the way it moves, the deliberately slow pace of the way it flies over things and stops and stuff like that. And it has like a
Such a
an
drill.
inertia and an acceleration, a deceleration, all that sort of stuff. It gives it such a gravity, such an
Mm-hmm.
absolute gravity, and it makes the creature feel more like real, more profound, more dangerous, because once you see the size of this thing too, this is one of the things that the 3D did really well, was sell the size of this thing. It feels so much larger in the rebuild film than it does in the original television series, and I just love that. One of the things people will hear me go on again and again about, just giant things in anime in general, is the Japanese have always figured out very clever ways to sell weight, height, all sorts of things like that with a particular creature or object that ordinarily is really hard to do with hand-drawn animation. It's easy to lose a sense of scale or weight, and they go out of their way to sell it. And the best mecha shows of the past have always done that really well. This does it well with 3D, and I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Well, and to expand off that point too, Chad, I really feel like the rebuilds establish a much grander sense of scale, because we already knew that in the TV series that the Avas are big, the angels are big, the sense, like the amount of destruction caused and collateral damage when they're fighting these monsters is pretty enormous. But in the rebuilds in particular, especially now that I've seen all 4 of them, one of the things that I found incredible was just how big and devastating some of that destruction was. Like where they literally took out half a mountain when the Evangelion gets thrown into it. Like it really puts it into a much easier to understand perspective of just how much space this fight is taking up. And the fact that people have to try to avoid it. Like the people of Tokyo 3 still have to evacuate. And even if though they have, this fight is so big, they're still not guaranteed to have found a safe place to escape it. Like it's crazy. And the sound design, because there's so many more explosions and big things that are stomping around and knocking into buildings, like it is so much grander than the TV series. So I think that's one of the things that Rebuild 1.0 definitely improved upon compared to the original.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things, like what we're talking about now is one of those things where most audiences, if the effects are done well and the animators know what they're doing and all the things come together with the sound design and everything else, that sense of largeness, the scale of the creatures in the Evangelions, the cityscape and all that sort of stuff, if it's done well, the audience doesn't even notice. They just absorb it, and it's exactly the way it should be. But if it's not there, if you do an animation where that is not there, it is so noticeable. It's like it's so absent, and you notice it right away that the mecha that you're looking at, they don't feel big, they don't feel heavy, they don't have a weight or a gravity. You know, you lose that sense of it. You know, and that is not easy to accomplish. Like you have to go out of your way to do that. You have to make sure that you are thinking about this visually ahead of time and staging your animation and creating your angles, even your camera angles, all that sort of stuff, in order to make these objects feel large and heavy and big. You know, it's not easy to do. Anime has a tradition of pulling it off, but we've seen a lot of mecha shows where they don't pull it off. You know, there's still some old stuff from like say for example Macross was a perfect example of a show that really did it well. Especially something like Macross Plus was incredible at selling scale and weight and heft and whatnot. It was a master animation for doing that. Something like Gundam 80, also another very good example that really sells the weight and the size. Just the angles they choose, the way things are edited. Sometimes all you'll see is like you'll be at like a ground level shot, like where the camera would be in like a normal live action movie, and all of a sudden there's this giant robotic foot that slams down in front of the camera. Just that simple shot sells scale, weight, just like the heaviness of these objects. And it's great, and it's something that really needs to be there. And when it's done well, it's invisible. But I'm so glad it was done as expertly as it was done in this film and the rest of the films in this series.
I agree.
Yeah, even like American movies that have like giants fighting, like live action doesn't sell it as well as Evangelion. You know, it's just amazing to just. I mean, I know we're all just waiting. I mean, not just waiting, but we're waiting for the big action scenes for these shows. But Evangelion always like delivers in a special way, I mean, among other shows, but Evangelion gets it right like every time. And these movies, I mean, I can't wait for the next. We just watched the first one. I can't wait for the second one just to see what they do with those, And I bet like the fourth one will be like totally amazing, No spoilers, Celia. We know that you've seen it.
My lips are sealed, no spoilers, but I can confirm that like each movie just seems to improve upon everything that we've talked about here. Like the sound design, the sense of scale, the way that the action plays out, the way things are animated. And what's really amazing, having seen all 4 of them, is just the visual consistency, especially because these movies have taken a long time to come out. They were released over such a long period. You know, this first one is 2007. Thrice Upon a Time came out this year in 2021. This particular edit of the movie that is now up on Amazon, it's that far apart. But the fact that they still look so visually consistent, and the animation quality and just the impact of everything that you see stays that way over the course of 10 years? Like, that's amazing. Yeah, it's great. I also really love the theme song for this movie. Beautiful World by Utada Hikaru. I actually bought the album that song is on without realizing it was for an Evangelion film at the time. Yeah, because I hadn't heard about the rebuilds yet until the second one came out 2 years later. So I've been jamming to it for a long time, being like, hey, this is neat. And then I found the trailer on YouTube for the first movie set to the song and was like, oh, this goes with an Evangelion movie.
Nice.
There's new Eva content. That makes me really happy because I love Evangelion. But
it also, for me, as an older anime fan, maybe this is dating me a little bit, but I also really like this style of computer animation for mecha. This is like my favorite version of it. Not to slag off of any other versions which are have more detail and stuff like that, and in more volumetrics and everything to the animated objects, but I really like how it mimics that look and feel of old school hand-drawn animation, where it's just primary colors, shadows, and highlights. Those 3 together and whatnot, and the way they do the CG in this movie and in the other rebuild movies it's such a delight, because it feels both like an old school mecha anime, and then also clearly better, and it's my favorite version of CG animated mecha, and I absolutely eat it all up. And I always use this and things like Yamato 2199 and even standalone Ghost in the Shell standalone complex as my favorite examples of how to do CG animated vehicles and mecha and whatnot. This is my favorite style.
Yeah, it's not just the mecha too. Oh god, it's so gorgeous when the cities when the city starts to shift, and you see the little details, the little stairways beneath the buildings, and they're you're whoa, look how big this thing is, and look how small the people would be if they were standing on that stairway, and just the little details that it has, and so much color, and it's all animated. It's not just stills. You know what I mean? I'm just I was thinking about yeah, I'm gonna watch it again. I'm gonna watch number 1 again before I move on to number 2. But it's just it's not like a chore or anything like that. It's pleasure. It's too awesome. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but there have been some tweaks to some of the nerve vehicles as well. And it wasn't something that I really paid that much attention to until the second one. But I think it's pretty well known at this point that Hideaki Anno is a low-key, maybe not so low-key military otaku, because he really loves putting lots of different kinds of military vehicles into Evangelion in particular. But for the rebuilds, they really refined some of the designs of the helicopters, some of the tanks and other things that they're using, which normally I wouldn't really pay that much attention to because I'm not particularly interested. But it was just enough that I noticed it and was like, huh, this is different, but it looks good. It's not where, they changed the design entirely and now it's just ugly or doesn't seem like it fits in. It just feels like a natural progression of the technology within the universe of Evangelion.
Yeah, they're Harrier-esque attack ships and stuff are different than the TV design. They're definitely recognizable as that particular craft from the TV series, but they're definitely they definitely got an upgrade. Even things like you said, the jeeps, the tanks, even vehicles like a refueling truck or something like that. I seem to remember in the background and everything. I was like, that's interesting. And of course, the thing about being an old school mecha anime fan is that old school anime actually used to do that a lot. Like Macross, the original Macross was also really good for that. Just throwing in what most people would say, oh, it's just background designs. I'm not going to pay any attention to that. But if you do pay attention to them, they're interesting. Somebody put some thought into like the visual design of these machines and said, you know what, I'm going to make this a little different. I'm going to make this distinct. I'm going to make this grab your attention. And if you were, I guess, young enough and interested enough, you were rewarded for seeing those little details in the background. And Evangelion, yeah, does that as well. Like these rebuild films, it goes back to that in a way and rewards you for all the little things that you can enjoy and see in the mechanical design. And for a mechanical design, enthusiast like me, it's candy. It's awesome.
I think too, it provides something for the fans who are already immersed in Evangelion, who have already seen the TV series.
Yeah.
So that way it doesn't feel like they're just watching the same thing over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. The one thing that within a storyline that's different, and that's something I mentioned when we were watching it, Chad, that I didn't realize from the first watch that was Lilith that they showed, and not Adam. And they didn't show Adam at all, right? In this one, in the first one. So yeah, and our friend George had to like explain it to me. Like I was like, like Lilith, what's she doing under there? Like yeah, it just threw me off that they switched that also. So, and I have no understanding why they did it. Is that going to come into play, or is that what's?
Well, I mean, Lilith has always been the one in Central Dogma. Adam is the one that Kaji retrieved in the TV series for Gendo in the briefcase.
See, that's the thing. I was like,
which that doesn't quite go exactly the same either in 2.0. It's quite different, and it plays a big role later in 3.0 and Thrice Upon a Time as well. But it's just a small tweak, like it's the littlest detail change to that particular scene. But yeah, and we also got to Lilith a lot faster. Like in the TV series, it took several episodes before we found out that Lilith was being kept in Central Dogma and what Gendo was actually trying to do and what Seal's mission was, or Celia, I should say. So it was very clear that they're just trying to get the ball rolling because they know they've only got a limited amount of time with the movie format compared to a TV series.
Man, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, I feel like watching the whole series now instead of just keep going on to the next movie.
I'm up
all of a sudden, like you cannot advance makes sense to me. I'm like, oh, I gotta go back.
Right?
I'm up for it. You want to do that? Yeah.
No. We gotta finish the movies. I want to get on to the last one.
Oh my goodness! I actually rewatched the TV series last year.
Me too.
I binged it.
Oh, yeah.
I binged it in 48 hours.
Oh my god!
During the first lockdown of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's
true. I do not recommend. That's not a show that you can binge in 2 days.
I think after you've seen it so many times, maybe. But not if you're like a first-time watcher.
No way. It's such an emotionally heavy show that compressing it into that short time frame was just like, it's very cathartic. Like if you need a good cry and want to know that people out there are experiencing like apocalyptic, like on the edge of death type of things somewhere in the anime universe, like, in that sense, it's like cool. It's great for that emotional release, but it is also exhausting. So fun, but I don't recommend
I wouldn't recommend it. It's like experiencing all the stages of grief like in a flash. I'm like, oh,
pretty much.
No thanks.
Exactly it. And especially because like Evangelion like really sticks to its guns with a lot of the Freudian and Jungian like psychological things that when you cram it all in at the same time, especially because Freud was really fucked up as a psychologist. Like even though it's the basis for all psychology, he had some pretty screwed up thinking regarding women, children, really mentally unstable people, and so even though some of those philosophies are present, like, with the id and the ego and, and pathos and ethos and all those things, it's a lot to process at once.
He
especially
probably
because
saw
everyone
Evangelion
is.
all at once, and he just drove
I
him
bet he
crazy.
did. I bet he did, and that's where he's like, "Oh shit!"
He's hooked him up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. And then in the rebuilds, that stuff is especially heavy. I do feel like though, because we're basically being introduced to new versions of these characters, like they're not the same as who they are in the TV series, and they're really expecting us to treat them as separate characters, that there are some things that are just a little bit different. Like Misato still has that maternal drive to protect Shinji, and that's something which is why she, in the first rebuild, she's like, well, come live with me so that way you're not alone. It's not quite the same self-serving type of motivation as it was in the TV series, I feel, where she wanted to help Shinji, but really she was just happy to have a roommate where she could push all of her chores off on him. And that's not present in Rebuild 1.0. So it is interesting how there are just some things that I really like. Some of the things I liked about these characters in the TV series, because it made them feel a little bit more like real people, isn't necessarily there, but it is something that's made up for in the later films. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Even Rey was a lot better in the films. Like, she wasn't so pitiful. A lot more
I admit that by the end of this series, like, I've never really cared for Rey. She's never been a character I liked. I always thought she was just really boring and actually kind of a negative stereotype for like the ideal woman because of just how waifish and quiet and demure she is. But by the time I got to the end of the rebuild movies, like I really liked her. So it's impressive, the character work that happens in these films. I'm excited for you guys to see the other ones.
All right, so
there's more for her to do, I think, in this rebuild film than there was in the early part of the Evangelion series.
You think so?
Well.
It seems like a rush. So. Like how do you think it's more for her to do on this, since the story's so like truncated?
Well, that's just it. Like I think like her, like she didn't do so much for so long in the television series that it just felt like exactly like it drained her character of any sort of like, development or agency or anything else like that. And I just think here she's still like in the early stages and whatnot, but she just seems more like active. And I know that's kind of crazy to say for a character like this, though. which is almost comatose. But I mean, comparatively, like keep in mind we're talking TV versus movie here. Comparatively, she does feel like she's actually like she's saying more things, she's acting more ways, like there's more of her personality here, even though it's still like it's very like early stage kind of thing. Just her interactions with like Shinji and stuff like that, she's just very like straight to the point. She sort of like tells him exactly what she thinks he should do and how she what she wants to do and everything. And when she doesn't feel like explaining herself, she just acts and leaves, kind of thing. Like it's particularly like the scene inside of her apartment, right? And it's just like it's like it flows along a little bit better. I know I feel like I'm making excuses for like what is a pretty not great character, but I think it's just better. It's better overall. And maybe it's just a matter of time compression. Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's because it's just the movie and we don't have to see this like drag on over like 7 episodes or something like that before anything gets anywhere kind of thing. But yeah, I do like it. I'm also I'm not sure if I'm on board with Celia's overall. Maybe the 4th movie will change my mind. I've never really been all that big of a Rey fan either. I've never been all that big of an Asuka fan either.
For shame, Chad.
She's entertaining, but yeah,
I love her. She's so broken and mean, and I love her.
I know, I like that about her, but it's just like they're sort of playing off like different aspects of like different extremes of human behavior, and I was hoping like anyway, I don't want to get into the TV series too much.
Like I've always said about Rey, like she was such a blank that a lot of guys, fanboys, projected their ideal anime girl into her or something like that. Well, the TV version, I gotta. Yeah. This time I'm gonna be watching her a lot closer to see if there's any like more improvements towards her character. So
she's still that character. Like
she's still that
like,
character. You can't change her completely.
Yeah,
for sure.
no, absolutely, without being true to like what the character. I mean, this is how they
It'd be
wrote
disappointing
her.
if she was so different. You know, all of a sudden.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, like, and I think we've mentioned this before too, like knowing the story of Rey, of like who she is, and knowing the story of Gendo and what he's all about and stuff like that. It's like I still get like super creeped out. But like watching the first film, like especially that sequence in the first Rebuild film where and this is like similar to the series as well, where Shinji is seeing the two of them interact, and he's like clearly super like depressed and a little jealous, and like there's a bunch of really bad emotions going on there. And it's even worse because he doesn't even realize who she is. He doesn't understand what his father is up to and why he's like this to Rey and everything. And it's so fucking creepy. I just hate him so much.
Is Gendo
complex?
Is Gendo a lot more? Is Gendo a lot more despicable in the movies, or
He's not written more despicable.
You don't think? Oh, I hated him so much.
He's just more despicable because of the audience's foreknowledge of who he is, and now we're watching him go through this stuff, and it's just like, we know, we're on to you. We know who you are. We know what you're all about, and you're a fucking nightmare.
We already have a bias against him before he even has a chance to like.
Exactly.
Oh my god! I want to strangle him, through the screen.
You absolute horror of a human being.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, Anyway, I just had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, I totally agree though, because like I can't remember if it's this one or if it's 2.0, but there is a scene where Gendo like takes Shinji to his mom's grave in an attempt to like kind of connect with him. But it feels, and like there's just a part of me that's like, why though? Because one of the things that really makes Gendo a great villain is not giving him any redemption. Yes. He's so hyper-focused on his end goal that he's willing to achieve it by any means necessary, even if it means destroying all of humanity so that he can be reunited with Yui. Like, so it was kind of weird that they gave him this more human element. And I understand it now, now that I've seen the final film, it does come back later. So it's something to keep an eye on. But after seeing who he was in the TV series, I'm like, I kind of like this evil Gendo. Like, I really don't want to find a reason to go, he's a bad guy, but he's still a person too. He has thoughts and feelings, and I'm like, I really don't want to give him. I don't want to give him the benefit of a doubt. You know.
I don't think it's too much as. I don't think the problem is really sympathy for the devil in this case. I think it's more that just in the television series, I agree with you totally on this. I didn't really feel that scene in the Rebuild films offered much, and I think it kind of like, again, I think it did take away from his character a little bit, because in the television series he's such a well-written like sociopath. Like he felt like so many people, like, not that we've necessarily met personally, but who we felt the effects of through their actions, because they're people in power, like maybe certain politicians that in your whatever country you live in and whatnot, right? Or certain people who you've seen in the public eye, and you might not necessarily know them personally, but you feel you understand their motives and you're sort of repulsed by them. And that's just, that's like a certain, like, if it's not a true, like, I don't think Gendo is necessarily a true sociopath, or maybe that's giving him too much credit. But I definitely think he's on the scale of like, what the hell is it? Oh God, I just read this too. I'm reading a book about psychopaths, and I know this, but I forgot the acronym. Sorry. Anyway, I'll move on. He's on a scale. He's on one of the scales where you're not considered a true psychopath, but you're on like a scale of like antisocial, like, all the anti-personality disorder, and it's just like, he's definitely like high on there, but he's also high functioning as well, right? Which is what makes him so dangerous. And he's like a lot of the worst people that we have living in our world with us. And that's actually what I liked about the television series, because he was not necessarily a relatable villain, but he was a very accurately portrayed and written villain in a vein that felt very true to, like, you know, reality, which is what made him so awful. Because it's like, we know like leaders and CEOs and people like who act like this, you know, and it's just like, yeah, it's awful.
So without getting too spoilery about the second movie, is there anything that we have to like look out for besides Gendo being creepy at the graveside? Or
there are some significant changes to events from the TV series in 2.0. Without spoiling anything, just you'll have to watch the scenario with Ava Unit 6, which is pretty, you know, that's pretty infamous in the TV series. That's the Ava that is corrupted by an angel that takes over it. So that is different. Also, the story completely veers off course in the TV series about halfway through. Like, it starts building up an original story. Something really, really big happens that gets you all set up for 3.0. So yeah, it's good.
I'm excited about it. Evangelion would be the only show like this that they could change the story where I would look forward to it. Like, if they would do that to like Attack on Titan, it would be like a total sin. You know what I mean? But Evangelion, you just like, just give it to me. You know, it's just another version of the same story, but like, surprise me what you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's good. Oh, and Asuka shows up! Yay!
Finally, I totally forgot that she wasn't in the first movie. Like, I don't remember.
I did too, until I watched it, and I'm like, where is she?
Yeah, which is good. That like I totally forgot. It'll be like a first time viewing for me. You know, like the second one. Like, I don't remember anything about it. It's been years.
Great, yeah. I think her introduction both in the television series and in the second film is great. It's awesome. I think it's a really good. I like that they didn't introduce her until later, because she gets such a amazing entrance.
Good.
Yeah.
I can't believe the last movie's out. Like, it's a thing.
Oh, I know.
Right?
it's been a not thing for so long that we've gotten used to like the world like that, and now that it is a thing, it feels surreal.
Right. Well, I mean, look at the difference. Like, 3.0 came out in 2012. Thrice Upon a Time came out this year. That's almost a decade's gap between the two movies. Like, that's how long this thing has been in production.
And the way it happens during the pandemic is just like, I feel like it should have been like a bigger event. And it's like, oh yeah, it's on what is it, Amazon now? I'm like, all right, cool, I'll watch it. You know, I guess that's why I want to go through the whole thing again.
Another thing too, just like now, like this, just between the span of the last movie, the third rebuild, and the fourth rebuild, like simultaneous international release has become like a thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Even Japan got it. I must admit that
even I was blown away. I was like, wait, it's on Amazon same day? I was like, I mean, I knew that simultaneous release had, we've done them before, but it's just like, for some reason with Evangelion, it hit harder. It was just like, wow, like, this is crazy. Yeah. Shook me up.
It's amazing. I will say I am a little disappointed I didn't get to see Thrice Upon a Time in the movie theater. Like, that was one of the things I was really looking forward to when they announced the initial premiere date in 2020. And so I was like, cool, summertime in Japan, I'm going to go to Tokyo and I'm going to watch this thing in the movie theater, even though there's no subs on it. But I am determined. Like, and I already had, a trip. I was already planning a trip that summer anyways. And the movie date happened to coincide with my planning. And then COVID ruined everything. So, but especially because Thrice Upon a Time is totally something that's worth seeing on the big screen. Like, it is such a cinematic experience on its own that
all of these
I'm really disappointed it didn't get a movie theater run. But at the same time, like, it's also really cool that it's completely accessible on Prime. Like, you don't even have to pay extra to rent it or buy it. It's included with a Prime membership. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I think all of these films are very grand, very cinematic. Yeah, they made like an amazing transition from television show to movie. Like, it's just that, this, like you said earlier, we were talking about like scale and size and all the rest of that stuff. It's also like grand in scope and, you know, epic in its production and everything else. It feels like a, you know, it does feel like a, like if a, perish the thought, but if a major Hollywood studio decided to do a big budget animated version adaptation of like Evangelion, this is what it would look like, kind of thing, right? You know, it would look this good, it would sound this good, it would, the production values would be this high, kind of thing, right? Like, yeah, it's awesome.
Disney Pixar Evangelion win.
Don't even joke about something.
Okay, guys, that's our discussion about the first movie of the Rebuild series. We're going to come back pretty soon and talk about the second show. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot. Bye.